I'm Liam.
I'm Wayne,
You're listening to In Film We Trust YouTube.
a place where we post clips from our recent episode.
All links down below in the description.
And now, on with the show.
Because Jimmy's dad and Ruth's dad, who are isolating separately, they're both sick at this point, physically vomiting. So you're kind of thinking, oh shit, are they radiation poisoned?
Yeah, also, because at this point, because we see the houses, because one of them asks her husband, I just need a glass of water, and he does get some water at the tap, but just how dusty the whole house is, and you think everything they've inhaled at this point.
But you see what he used to get the water? A sieve.
A sieve. I remember
a colander.
He picked it up, and I sat watching. I said, "That's a sieve."
That was a comment on the uselessness of the situation. There is nothing he could have done there. It didn't matter what he picked up.
Anything he picked up would have been unfit for purpose, basically.
You have to wonder if the water supply would have been contaminated.
Probably. It would have been bloody
I know
awful.
it would obviously been in the tank, but you don't know what the hell.
Yeah, and it's at this point, when it says May 27th, this is one day after the attack. So from now on, when we get the date stamps, it also tells us how long after the attack. And this kind of gets bigger and bigger. Unlike the date before, which was smaller and smaller, now that's like bigger and bigger after, as it shows you the fallout.
One of the most emotional, poignant moments of around about this time in the film is when Ruth's granny messes the bed. She poos herself. And you see the emotional toll that this is having on people and what they're going to have to put up with.
At one point it says the population has gone down to basically medieval level, but it's the same with like the nature of people. Like everyone's going back to this very primitive status.
And Michael, Jimmy's young brother, is under rubble. He's dead.
He's buried under
All
rubble.
you see is his leg and trainers hanging out.
Because what the film does is it's not like this entire family survives and this entire family survives. It shows how these kind of attacks are indiscriminate. It doesn't matter which family you belong to. It doesn't matter who your loved ones are. Anybody can be affected. So, like,
would you say this film's an ensemble piece, or would you say I know it's mainly centered on Ruth, but you're seeing how a small community is affected.
I think it's more about the community, because there's a lot of time where Ruth is kind of off the screen, and it almost makes you feel, has Ruth gone? Because I don't believe we see Jimmy again, do we?
No, because she goes out looking for Jimmy, which leads to one of the most visually striking scenes of the film, because she heads out looking for Jimmy, and it's so atmospheric. There's the fog kicking in. You see people in the streets; they're catatonic and staring, or wounded, or even dead and burnt to a crisp. And she's walking through, and it almost looks like a shot from a Tarkovsky film.
Yeah, it's almost like also that. Did you ever see The Piano with Adrian Brody?
Yeah.
That scene where he's walking. The pianist, sorry. Where he's walking along the street and he's crying as the whole place has been blown. It's like that. She's just wandering through this wasteland.
Because we find out that the cloud debris has blocked out the sun, and it's leading to cold weather now. Because people are feeling the cold now.
It's created what's called a nuclear winter, which is where, the thing is blocked out, and that affects, obviously it drops the temperature, but it also affects crops as well. The crops that aren't already destroyed by the radiation, of course. And it kind of cuts back now and then to those people in the
emergency headquarters.
In the basement.
This poor guy, they're saying about rationing to 500 calories a day. And this will be polite, this bigger set guy, he's listing what they can have for 500 calories. And the foods he lists, I'm sure that's going over 500 calories, but he breaks down.
Yeah, he does.
I think it's a thought of how life has now changed forever.
It does. He says at one point, I believe it's him, he says, "What's the point of wasting food on people who are going to die anyways?"
Yeah.
There's a lot of these lines which are, it's like these very uncomfortable realities that we'd have to face if this were ever to happen.
These harsh moments where you're going to have to pick and choose who lives and dies based on their chances of survival, basically.
What I like is a lot of these lines don't come up during an argument. One person says it, and it's left to sit as everyone else sits around thinking, oh yeah, God, he's kind of true. And no one really argues because they know, yeah, that's kind of the reality of this situation.
Because around this time, we're getting martial law. Martial law's creeping in, aren't they? And when we get to Ruth's, there's no one there anymore. There's looters there. There's the dead granny in the living room. And the cops shoot one of the looters, and one of the looters reveals that there's two people in the basement, which one of them, but they're both Ruth's parents, and one's been bashed in the head. Which seemed a really unnecessary move from the looters if they were just wanting food.
If just for food, you think they would just have taken it, yeah, unless that person fought back against them or something.
Yeah, but did you see how weak they were?
Yeah, they probably wouldn't have been able to raise a hand, but...
And there was 3 looters, was there not?
There was, yeah, but this has got to a point where money, and the narrator even acknowledges this, money has basically lost all meaning. It's all about... Food is the currency now.
Food is the currency, which is why the tin openers were such a good
Exactly.
idea.
If you had a tin opener now, it would be okay.
You wouldn't need to bash a tin with a rock.
No, you wouldn't.
Like Ruth's resorted to, isn't she?
Mm-hmm.
So you're sensing the importance of all these menial things that in everyday world, they don't have much significance. Like a tin opener. That's an appliance you don't put much thought to.
It's a very mundane, everyday item, but at this point, because everything has regressed to this point, the most basic things are now the most important for everybody.
And it's the emotional attachments, because there's a scene in the graveyard, and it's just Jim's dad lying against the headstone. And this ties in with his young son, Michael. He's just playing Michael's little computer game, isn't he?
Yeah. Just like
Just that emotional attachment. That's all he's got left, essentially, of his family now.
just that feeling of loss and lament and just what's happened to the country. Because at this point, detainment camps are starting to pop up.
Is there not one at a tennis club?
There is, yeah, and capital punishment has been reinstated.
Because there's firing squads. You see scenes of just people being shot against the
there's
wall.
folk getting shot against walls,
Which I'm
yeah.
assuming is looters and being shot.
Probably, yeah. It's got to a point where it even says if you want food, you have to work for it. So food has been used as payment, and it's been withheld as punishment, which is horrible. Because when you think, you can't just say to people, "Oh, you can't have any food because we need it to survive." It's not like being deprived of like internet or something like that.
Well, we also find out, I think it's through narration, that there's a mass exodus now from cities into the countryside looking for food. Mm-hmm. And the physical effects now from the fallout are reaching their peak.
Yeah.
And this is where Ruth uses the rock as the tin opener.
Yeah,
And she should have listened to the guy who was selling for $150. I'm just saying.
just that decision cost her dearly.
So
yeah.
if anybody comes across a random tin opener salesman,
Yeah.
just buy it to be on the safe side.
Put it in your pocket, yeah. This is also the point of the film where, like we said about the dates earlier, a lot of the time the day of the week isn't even mentioned because it feels like it's got to a point, if you're in this much misery, this much suffering, your whole day is just pain and hunger. It doesn't matter what day of the week it is. People are not even going to acknowledge that.